Vorra had never thought much about humans. Most of her kind did not. The Sulhuri were an old people, proud in the way that only a species with 6,000 years of unbroken civilization can manage to be proud. Quietly, smugly, and with absolutely no room for argument. Humans had been fumbling around in space for barely 3 centuries. They were loud, emotionally unpredictable, and they had this bizarre habit of laughing at things that were not, by any reasonable measure, funny. Vorra had filed them under harmless and irrelevant, and moved on with her life. Then her life, as she knew it, ended on a Tuesday. It was not even a dramatic Tuesday. There was no storm, no explosion, no ominous drumbeat from the universe warning her that everything was about to fall apart. There was only Counselor Drev, standing at the edge of the docking bay on Sulhuri Prime, handing her a single data chip and saying, with the practiced warmth of a cooling furnace, "Your position has been reassigned. Your departure is scheduled for dawn." Reassigned. That was the word they used. As if Vorra were a desk, or a cargo container, or a decorative vase that no longer matched the new interior decor of the Ministry of Interstellar Affairs. She had served the ministry for 19 years. 19 years of translation work, diplomatic correspondence, cultural analysis, and keeping her opinions firmly behind her teeth because the Sulhuri valued composure above everything else. Composure, loyalty, and the appearance of unity. Particularly the appearance. She had done all of it correctly. She had never once raised her voice in a formal setting. She had never embarrassed anyone. She had never, not once, done the thing that Sulhuri protocol quietly demanded you never do, which was care too loudly about anything. And they had discarded her anyway. The data chip contained a single-line transfer order. She was to report to the fringe station at Belker 9, a place so far from the political center of Sulhuri space that it barely showed up on most navigational maps. It was where the ministry sent people it wanted to forget. Quietly. Politely. With the sort of permanent finality that felt too civilized to call what it actually was. Vorra stood in the docking bay for a long time after Drev left. The ships moved around her. The crew workers chatted and hauled and shouted the short, efficient things that people who work with their hands shout. The sky over Sulhuri Prime was doing its usual magnificent violet and amber sunset, which had been described in poetry for literally thousands of years and had therefore lost all ability to comfort anyone. She looked at the chip. She thought, very carefully, about what to do next. Then she made the kind of decision that 19 years of careful composure had never once prepared her for. She did not go to Belker 9. The transport she boarded instead was a mixed-species freighter heading toward the border systems. It smelled like engine coolant, recycled atmosphere, and something that might have been food or might have been an industrial solvent. The crew was an assortment of beings from 6 different civilizations, none of whom seemed particularly curious about why a Sulhuri woman in a ministry-grade formal coat was sitting in the cargo hold with one bag and the expression of someone who had recently been pushed off a cliff and was still deciding how to feel about it. The exception was the pilot. His name was Marcus Oren. Human. Approximately 30 standard years old, which in human terms meant he was young enough to make bad decisions confidently and old enough to have made enough of them that he was, somehow, still alive. He had dark brown skin, close-cropped hair, and the kind of easy, unhurried manner that Vorra had always privately found slightly suspicious in people. Nobody that relaxed had nothing to worry about. It was statistically improbable. He brought her a cup of something hot approximately 40 minutes into the flight, set it down next to her without being asked, and said, "You eat? Or is this a sitting dramatically in the dark kind of situation?" Vorra stared at him. "I beg your pardon." "No offense," he said, sitting down across from her with his own cup and absolutely zero invitation to do so. "You just have the look. I've seen it before. Something went sideways, you made a fast exit, and now you're deciding if you made the right call." There was a pause. "Did you?" he asked. Vorra opened her mouth to say something precise and dismissive, the kind of thing that would establish appropriate social distance and make him go away. Instead, to her considerable horror, what came out was, "I have absolutely no idea." Marcus Oren nodded slowly. He did not look surprised. He did not look pitying. He looked, of all things, genuinely interested. "Good answer," he said. "Honest people always start there." Vorra decided, in that moment, that humans were either very wise or very annoying. Possibly both. She had a feeling she was going to find out. Belcher 9 was, technically speaking, nobody's problem. That was the diplomatic way of saying it sat right in the middle of contested border space, claimed by 3 different civilizations and actively administered by none of them. The station itself had been built by a mining consortium that went bankrupt before the second wing was finished, which explained why roughly 40% of it felt like someone had started a sentence and then walked away mid-word. Exposed conduits. Half-welded walls. Corridors that led to other corridors that led, eventually, to a door that opened onto raw vacuum. The kind of place that safety inspectors visited once, wrote a very long report about, and then never returned to. Vorra had been there for 6 days when the Sulhuri found her. She heard them before she saw them. 2 official voices using the clipped, precise tones of ministry personnel, asking the station's front desk operator, a bored Yethrin named Gosk, whether a Sulhuri female matching her description had checked into any registered berths. Gosk, who had the moral flexibility common to anyone who had worked frontier stations long enough, said nothing for approximately 2 seconds. Then he said, slowly, "Can't say I recall." It bought her maybe 4 minutes. Marcus, who had apparently decided at some point during the 6-day journey that Vorra was now his responsibility, heard the voices too. He appeared at the door of the storage room she had been using as a makeshift living space, looked at her expression, looked at the corridor behind him, and performed the fastest threat assessment she had ever witnessed a human conduct. "Back way," he said. "Now. Don't argue." "I was not going to argue," Vorra said, which was a lie, but she said it while already moving, so it hardly counted. The back way turned out to be a maintenance corridor that smelled aggressively of hydraulic fluid and questionable decisions. Marcus moved through it like he had memorized every turn, which, she realized, he probably had. The kind of man who learned the exits first. She filed that observation away with the growing collection of things about Marcus Oren that were not what she had expected from a human. They came out on the far docking ring, where his freighter, the Ressa Kael, sat in berth 11 looking exactly as unremarkable as it always did. That was, she had come to understand, intentional. The ship was well maintained underneath. It just did not advertise the fact. Like its pilot. He got the engines running in under 3 minutes. Gosk, bless his morally flexible heart, had apparently told the ministry officers that she had been asking about transports heading toward the outer systems. The opposite direction entirely. That bought them more time than 4 minutes. The Ressa Kael slipped out of Belcher 9 while 2 Sulhuri officials were still standing in the main hall, looking at a corridor that did not lead anywhere useful. Vorra sat in the co-pilot seat, which she had started occupying because it was better than sitting in the cargo hold and pretending she was not curious about how the ship operated. She watched the stars shift as they cleared the station's proximity field. She said nothing for a long time. Then she said, "Why?" Marcus did not pretend to misunderstand the question. "Because they were going to drag you back somewhere you didn't want to go," he said. "And you hadn't done anything wrong. Near as I can tell. You do not know that." "No," he agreed. "But I know the look of someone who got punished for being inconvenient. Seen it enough. My grandmother had a word for it. She said some systems eat the careful ones. The ones who follow all the rules and never complain and make the whole machine look good. Because those are the easiest ones to sacrifice when something goes wrong and somebody needs to take the blame quietly." Vorra turned to look at him. He was watching the navigation screen with the same unhurried expression he always wore, the one she had initially read as indifference and had gradually revised to something more like patience. "That is a very specific observation," she said. She was a very specific woman. There was a pause. "Where are we going?" Vorra asked. "That's actually a great question." Marcus leaned back and crossed his arms with the particular ease of someone who had survived enough uncertain situations that one more did not register as a crisis. "I've got a contract run to Vorra station in about 4 days. After that, I've got nothing locked in. So technically, we've got options." He said it completely without ceremony. As if it were already settled. As if the question of whether she was staying had been decided somewhere between Belker 9 and the edge of contested space, and nobody had bothered to inform her because the answer was already obvious. The most irritating part was that he was not wrong. Vorra looked out at the stars. 6,000 years of Sulhuri civilization had taught her people to value order, continuity, and the comfort of knowing exactly where you stood and why. She had built her entire adult life on those values. She had worked carefully, spoken carefully, existed carefully, and in the end, it had not mattered at all. The system had moved her like a piece on a board, and when she had refused to be moved, it had sent 2 officials in pressed uniforms to collect her like lost luggage. She thought about what Marcus's grandmother had said. About systems that eat the careful ones. She thought about 19 years of keeping her opinions behind her teeth. She thought about the fact that she was currently sitting on a human freighter, in contested border space, with no official standing, no ministry credentials, and precisely one person in the known universe who had helped her without asking what was in it for him. "I speak 9 languages, she said finally. "I have 19 years of diplomatic and cultural analysis experience. I know the bureaucratic structures of 11 different civilizations well enough to find their weak points in under an hour. And I am," she paused, apparently, no longer employed. Marcus turned to look at her. One corner of his mouth moved upward in the slow, unhurried way that she was starting to recognize as his version of a smile. "Sounds like a resume," he said. "It is," said Vorra. He nodded once, the way people nod when something has been settled without needing to be formally announced. Then he turned back to the navigation screen and pulled up the charts for the Vorra run. "Co-pilot seat's yours," he said. "I'll move the boxes." Vorra looked at the seat. She looked at the stars. She looked at the very strange, very patient, entirely unexpected human who had just handed her a future like it was nothing, like futures were things you simply offered people when they needed one, without making a ceremony of it or asking for anything back. The Sulhuri had 6,000 years of civilization behind them. She was starting to think they had missed something important. "Marcus," she said. "Yeah. Thank you." He glanced at her sideways. "Don't mention it," he said. And then, because he was human and apparently constitutionally incapable of leaving a moment alone, he added, "Besides. 9 languages? You're going to make me a fortune at Vorra." Vorra closed her eyes briefly. "You are insufferable," she said. "Little bit," he agreed cheerfully. The Ressa Kael moved through open space, heading for Vorra station, carrying one human with a talent for exits and one Sulhuri woman who was, for the first time in 19 very careful years, not entirely sure what came next. She found, to her own considerable surprise, that she did not mind the uncertainty at all. Friends, if you are enjoying our videos and want to watch new and exciting sci-fi and HFY stories every day, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to turn on the bell icon so you never miss any of our latest uploads. Like the video and share it with your friends as well, so our community can continue to grow and bring you even more amazing content.